Good morning, Katrina.
Good morning.
Okay. All right, we can hear you clearly. Gala Rinpoche, can we do a sound test, please, with Geshe?
Ngatu tele. Good morning.
나도
Udawa.
될래.
Oh yeah,
거기도
yeah.
여보 거기도.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh this. That ya wu kong ke chas.
Good morning again, Rinpoche. And good morning, Katrina. Thank you
Oh
for
yeah,
your
also,
translations.
welcome. Also, ngatu tele.
And welcome to all our online participants. We're happy that you can join us this morning. So Geshe will probably finish the text either today or next Monday. And if you'd like to make an offering for his incredibly precious teachings, or Katrina Brooks for her excellent translation, and to the Abbey for hosting the teachings, you'll find how to do that in the chat box. And something to look forward to, through his tremendous generosity, Rinpoche has agreed to teach on the precious garland, Nagarjuna's precious garland, starting in the spring. So keep an eye on the Abbey website for the start of that. So we'll begin with some preliminary prayers, and the link for those prayers is also in the chat box.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one that's gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, knower of the world's supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow, with the supreme science, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field, endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all-seeing, subdue the 4 faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn, Mount Meru, 4 lands, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you. May all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
뭐야, 뒤에서.
Dixon.
뭐야. 대한 조지 파팅 어디서 송래, 로. 내가 천의 연통 세계 넘버 망사. 천의 연통 세계 넘버 망. 세계장 시선 메시베사. 강배 출라 호말렘바타 랑근데바 당도롱샤스. 오시 송바타로. angarazu metsede chidane ko shira rumbuke marwa yentondon chere songora chene yentos dinane da gazure ne lo mambule sade dileja chida chene ko tebra ine shira te ke omara age chene yentos da sheje da sose nyamso laye da sheje mambu shira de songora ba te chene yento sheje namba mangase 세장 지산 메시베 지단 통도 이백한 단다 거제 대로 예반이 텐테게 말와 로치마 북카시 대삼을 거가시 우리 텐테게 말해 어디엔데고 세장 지산 메시베 세대데 거제 대로 이네 단텐테게 말이셔라 지단 유 통도를 대나네 이마 거제 대로 예 텐테게 말와 이레마니에 대산이라 예는 텐테 세테게 말아 세장 치선 메시베 거제 여부터 하고 말해서 거라. 대다 가르쳐 오르스는 강배 출라 오말렘 바타르스. 대찬 셔라. 강배도 그 추다 오마냠도 트레션에 그 오마데 통 추디 샤샤고 있어라. 소소 고에 그 추디 예치토고 있어라. 가조디 예치토고 말아. 제단 강배 출라 오말렘 바타르스. 랑게 너바 당돌라셔. 소소 가르에다 개체오이나 그 체에 통도시데 체데데 고 가르잖아 다 르사르지로 인데다 치마 겨와 상부진로에 전다데 섭소시 오래서라 강배 출라 오말렘바타 랑게데바타 아실라 당돌라샤가 당레시세 사겨와 치마 기부 충분되지 상로에나 콜하다미 겨와 상부시 셔트베 땡 개버시 탑고 삼겨라 어때네 대답이 딜레 삼로 체르지나 어려 담부 대실 남나 망자시세 어려
So, to begin with, a quotation from the great master Atisha, who has said that the length of this life is short and there are so many things to know. And even the length of our life, though, is something that we can't be certain of. So just in the same way that a swan takes milk from water, we should willingly do those things that are important or what we would like. So this life is something that is a short period of time, and many of us have already lived a number of years, so we don't have a very long period here in this life. And when we think about it, there are basically infinite various things to know. And so when we look at the length of our life, though, there is no certainty. Like some of us may think, oh, well, I'll be here for a long time, but there's no way that we have a guarantee on that. We might think like, I'll be here today, tomorrow. We have that sort of sense in our mind, but yet there is no certainty. There is no assurance that we will be here for very long. The length of this life is something uncertain. So, in the way that a swan, they use this example of a swan who is able to extract the milk from water, really taking what is most important. Too should follow that example and not just sort of take up the affairs of this life, but really think beyond that to our future lives. At the very least, thinking about in the kind of thought of a being of small capacity, ensuring that we get a good rebirth, a good support of a human or a god life in the future, and thereby take up the kind of actions that are necessary for ensuring that.
Oh yeah. Oh, the take us order. Nambe chula o malambata ranga doba tandulon shasidu. Angarazu chibachi beshane sene roa. Nikyoachima. Kandish kuguresene. Kyoangemba tundula sobe, kyoangemba malambashe. Ane lada mela sobe, kyoa sambuchi. Dea sendile chutuba nashi, chutube ten kebarshe. O tindechi tobguara, deva tambuti tira. Nanze kibu chungo se chula tambuji we deva tira. O ti indiko. Kyoachima lada mi. Chutube ten kebarshe. Tanda chutuba nashi, ti kyun tuni ya. Ya jeton hansagi. Kukabi yebe. Nen milu ya, lai lu. Ten kebarshe chu tarsa, sanji ki chu tarsa. Tindechi liya kewe. Deva yora. O ti indu ti chindu ta kariche urasidu. Susu chuguru bati. Kyudi saane tili lepkiri, kyumeni tili yo marwa. O ti indu ngesongi kyo pa ka. Tada mi chudrube ten kebarshe toya tundali ya. Ane rangi lunga yusum jikone shenla tsawapa. Rawa. Ngazu miki wachi usigira. To ngazu ti namju tong chungchung reshigira ke ti shira ke shimbusigmara. Ina ke chinshu tiri dora ngaranzul ya. Liu jikone rawa. Sochi machin len soba rawa. Ane ngagi kone chuntra machizu. Yi kone nakshi nyusi lodala soba. O tinde chebe ne shenla tsawa yungu wara. Shenla tsawa yungu karindigo marasane shenla tunghe yungu wara. Indu shen tunghe da trendigo tsawa chungchung uchi. Tsawa chenpu mena ya. O tito ne ane miki wachu ti pa. Tin dosho so kyoba rawa. So kyoba sira, so chebe. So chebe dosho dila so kyoba si che. Majimba lembe tili ya so su kani mi nor su la malme che. Pa chini kani ki chibata ayata tindre sirwa. Ta miki wachu in dosho. O tini so kyoba la soba. O tila lokure esungora. Tindu tinga zu nyeri nal kechenpo che che. Tiri nime kong liya. Ene ngesong le kichi ke kyu. Lunga yisum ji kone kaya so cheba la soba. Kaya meba chigi insan. So choba la soba chini ji kiwa tupi insan. Nyeri mesina samlo tangji. Titu kuyara. Ya tichi son.
Mm. So here, as this describes, like a swan extracting the milk from water, we should willingly take up what is important to us. And as Dharma practitioners, the very first level is making sure, the sort of first level of our desire is making sure that we have the kind of basis of a life as a human or a god to be able to continue to practice the Dharma. So ensuring that we have that kind of a life and take birth in a place where the Buddha's Dharma has spread, we need to accumulate the kind of causes. If this is what we want to have, we have to accomplish the causes in order to achieve that. And so the basic causes of that are abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions and engaging in their opposites, the 10 virtues. So the 10 non-virtuous actions of killing and stealing and sexual misconduct, lying and harsh speech and so forth, covetousness, malice, these are all actions that cause harm to others. They generate suffering for others. And so while we might look down on this, like, oh, that's kind of insignificant, that's not really important, actually abandoning the 10 non-virtues and engaging in their opposites are really the foundation. They are critical. So we should make sure that any of our actions of body, speech, and mind are not going to cause harm or suffering to others. Even if we think it's just like a small harm or a small suffering, we still should avoid those kinds of actions. and at the same time make an effort to engage in their opposites. So the opposite of taking life is protecting life, of trying to do things that are nurturing for life. And the opposite of like stealing, we engage in things like generosity, making sure others have what they need. So on a daily basis, then we need to train in this, to take these activities up into practice, thinking at the start of our day, I'm not going to engage in any kind of actions that are harmful to others, that cause suffering to others. And instead, I'm going to work to engage actively in their opposites. This is the very first sort of level of willingly taking up what we want in terms of a Dharma practitioner.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the Indutinic soda. The Tambutilia, Najanam beauty city, Casoda. Oh, certain number of here song Seda, Nikichubong Sudit and Sungiara, certain number of here songs. Mulam Trima maybe some chars. Chinso Paro to Chimbe Troches. Casoda. Chimba Chudin Sava, some days and I do Paruchimba to share yora. Oh, the Geshe Buchetis, Chinso Paro to Chimba Troches ora. Mulam Trima maybe some chars. Tenis also Nikiwachu, Pangakiwachu to Batil Tenero. Nikeche Telia, Chimbaton as a Kiwachima Milu Lamba Yinaya, Longe di Pone, Tende Chavina, and the church does some local to Yomarwa. Te deco Longe Mabumbachi, Kuyora. Tende teacher to Chimbaton at the Sanjay Kachimbuche Tambusora. A Chimbangos attire here now, Longe Town and in a Tonson Pekuyora. And I got on the search pages, Tangiore. Teacher deco Kunjoya Fidu Chimbakuyora. The social in Zabuling somebody, Narazula one chayora. Zabuling Niching and Zabulinti Miss Ozako, Tilla one chayos and it is Chichanea. So that simple metal sopa yito onto the Pugara. And the Shalia, Chimbaton, Chesu Ranchi Yore, Chimbale Mabuyora, something Chimbatan is out of chicken, Minjik Chimba Sarah Raw. Oh, then Chimba. Change so trouble so but the Senako, Minji Basin Betantura. Oh, Tinduko, but the Gashin Buddhism Gora. Chimba Madan Longe Pumbura, Longe Ponda, and nature to be some of the Yungumara, Koran Kangi Master Tedekora. Yechele, and it's shooting so I did that again, Bishop Migachubu, shooting Songora. The Masona Chimbendre with the and then Tondura with Indelia, me and a Pendo Mary or the Pishi Yomara. Chimbatan Longe Yoya Yobichet, Kiwadi, me, Kiwadi Lambayina, and it tell a Longe tell a long shed, Drebuya, Mahobala sons at the Mason Chimbata, all tended in the Second Condufen and Chimba part of the Chimbasetia Drogara. In the Chimbaset Sudisha, Tinini Yabuchi Lamdo Long Alaya, Sobacom Gora. Rangi parts of my social teacher Yanaya, Shanjitsu Nevala Sobata, Nahamedro Mabuyon Sigra. O Tindek of the Seba Congormato, Kirachimbata, and the Carsore, Seba the Social Pala Sobata, Shella Sawapam, but the Ugumaris, or T doesn't go Seba the Catch, when you're in the Messinalia, Seba the Catch, but there's Oda. Says this, and to do the taco Kiwakangala, Troekone, Kavukone, Juque. Oh, T someday she rubs at her, she rub Chebache and Dota. Things is Ritilia, Yana under Samluta, Yana under Samluta, then the good thing is into order. Oh, Tendesha, till it tolia, and this was a Malamjane. Yawachima, Milu Kebarishet in digital netia, Tarchimbe, Saji, Tempatan Java shows, Chita Chulia, Mekanga Yabuda in Jirtaya, Tarchimashima Mugura, oh, Saji Chutan Dem Jambar shows of Sa. Malamjana, oh, Tendesha would have sung. Take a shushu said, Kibuchungalia, Tilla, Tendis.
So here, we need to hold this kind of basis of pure ethical conduct. And it's said that particularly for the being of small capacity, but the foundation for all, is that we need to have, again, this basis of pure ethical conduct connected by stainless prayers and aided by the practice of the 6 perfections. So here, even if one has held ethical conduct and is born as a human, if, say, for example, you didn't engage in generosity and are born in a completely destitute kind of situation, it's quite difficult to be able to even think of the Dharma if you're just trying to cover your basic necessities. So here, in order to be able to increase and develop all of these minds, we need to make sure that we have the kind of situation in which we are able to increase those. If we have, say, practiced generosity in the past and gain a good rebirth, wherein we have the kind of material necessities that we need, we can continue to increase and develop that attitude of giving. So here, material generosity is not the only type of generosity. We can give actual things, or like when we are offering the mandala offering, we imagine, we sort of conjure up in our minds all of the beautiful things within this world and offer it. We all have some kind of stake, some sort of control of this world. And so we are able to imagine that as a beautiful kind of an offering and make that, imagining it as a Buddha land and offering it to all sentient beings. So we can engage in material giving. We can protect others from fear. That is a type of generosity as well. There is giving of the Dharma. And this is something that is important for us to engage in because, again, we need to have the kind of conditions in the future wherein not only are we born as a human, but we have enough to sustain ourselves, to be able to continue to develop that attitude of giving away. And again, in order to gain a good rebirth, we need to make sure that we hold ethical conduct. If one does not have ethics, then the kind of results of generosity might ripen in a lower rebirth, wherein we have lots of things, but we are not in a good situation. And we also need to have patience. If we lack patience, we are unable to really keep our ethical commitments, and the kinds of virtues that we have accumulated, we destroy through our anger. So we also need to have the kind of joyous effort, perseverance in our practice of virtue. We need to develop the kind of wisdom, which is that investigative faculty, as well as our meditative concentration. And so here, engaging in not just the foundation of ethical conduct, but all of the 6 perfections is then brought together with these stainless prayers, making the kind of aspiration, may I gain a good rebirth, wherein I am able to meet with the teachings of the Buddha and continue to be able to practice.
Oh yeah. Then take us over. That delay ko samle chere de ya tordo ne kibun dringi samle ko gora. Oh de indiko. Tammi ki wa chupa ki wa chutumne. Tada me ludin kebar chechi tomna. Ro tichi dange sole de tendo yo sambo. Ya bode de chutrebe tendo ro ya bode. Ina ko tia ko tendo te wa chimare samgora. Yega na chilo sobe tunge mambo shochi ora. Oh ti indiko. Tesu samlu tangi ora. Mile kega na chilo sobe tunge ndo che de me mendo bata tunge mambo samta ora. Ramadu mambo che nga zungu sumto de ora. Samalia mendo betunge ora to. Pencho chamadu chi di madu shie da na cha yo kaga. Tunge sangma samlu ta de ra. Te kyo de za mai ba thoma me ba ne tinde samlu ta. Mile ke na si go ta nyo ye da tando ta ke she ba go she. Ro o ti de tunge mambo che ore samte ko le da nyamu ba shawa do che ne. Pumbun do le che ko chinje te le ya. Tunge je ra she chi ma to mendo sam. Ta ti le den de tendo sone tele tarwa chi che go do sam go ra. Tanda nga zu kyo la ya ti kyo chi ma la na ko. Koe kyo re de go ra. Ina ya koe kyo tende chi tendo sone ti. Te tendo ya tene. Tunge le tendo tarwe che do. Koe tunge le tendo tarwe che do. O ne tab chi che go do sam te tenda le ya ne. Ta tende ya la chu ni te mambo sam ya yor to. Ta tenda o te tre go do sam te tamba. Yongsa de kane yung go do sam na ne nga sam sa ngan jin da. Ane ta cho le cha ba. Te wang ge ne standi ma de sna ndo ma do yon de shan cho le ta. Te wang ge ne kane ke je she li ji che ba che sem gi sam le ta le ke wa me ke wa ka ga sa ge ora. O te tsa wa re sha sam je ne ki bun drink ge sam le ko ne. Tung he le ten do ta ra chi che go. Te ten do ne ta rao nga sam sam ma to sam ji ba ge ngan chin de ma shu cho ra ta go do sam. Te wang ge ne nga nge sam chak ge yu shu chen bu ma bu she. Ene te zo tu ge le ne ba ta na rang ge na ma do cho na kon du che. O ten de ten ne ko sam je le sa nge sa ne. Jawa Sange Langudu, something Toma Mevanere, Mamba Tindestego Chunape, Kalakabure, some Tunga de Yagu, Samlutana, Semlin Yuateg Shirang, Azuke Shira Salamata, Soasi Omara, or tea in the Tungeli Tendo Tawashi Chigo Techeto, and a dame bala soba chata, Yirin Messina, Condrunga, Trato, Drensimra. Oh, Tizuka de Kazeda, New Tango do, some Yamole Tara Shekudo, some Dipondo in the Vakia Guyora. Oh, ticket in the Tarato Veshedo. Oh, Nicarsoda. Amebata, Metapa Chamola Sobatet, Comeyora. There's a Combachagi, some Guyora. Yeah.
Mhm. So then going slightly beyond that, even if one is too, by accumulating virtue and protecting and guarding against the 10 non-virtues, ensure a good rebirth in the future. One looks at that kind of a life and you can see that that isn't something that is stable, lasting happiness. Like when we begin to reflect upon the various kinds of sufferings, not of the lower realms, those sort of go without saying, but the sufferings, even when one has taken birth as a human, we have all kinds of sufferings of wanting something and not getting it, or meeting with things that we don't want, losing things that we had, and so forth. When we really begin to reflect upon it, we can see that this is in the nature of suffering, this kind of a life, and reflecting further, seeing that really the taking up and casting off of our aggregates due to the force of karma and the afflictions, this is something that is what one would like to get out of. So here, although at this stage one recognizes that a good rebirth as a human or a god is something that can be used in order to strive for that state of definite lasting freedom, they recognize that that in and of itself is not something that is really true lasting happiness. So beginning by thinking about like the 12 links of dependent origination, they see how it is that this thought of I, some kind of a like stable or autonomous independent I, gives rise then to these thoughts of attachment towards one's own side, and aversion toward the other. And in turn, due to those kinds of afflictions, we accumulate karma, and this cycle continues. So reflecting in that way, a being at this level sees that by meditating on selflessness, by counteracting that fundamental root cause of our cycling in samsara, they can get rid of all of the kinds of suffering that comes from that. So here again, if one can see the kind of faults that come from this, that when we look at our life that we have now, even as a human, we see all of the various types of suffering that we have to encounter, like when things don't go our way and we get sad, or when we don't get what we want, when we meet with unwanted kinds of circumstances. And it's not just in this life, but rather this is something that is beginningless. Since beginningless time, we have been driven by this kind of ignorance. And when we see the faults of that, then one at this level says, I need to get rid of that kind of ignorance, as well as the attachment and aversion that come from that. And in order to do that, one needs to cultivate a kind of understanding of selflessness and subtle impermanence and so forth, in order to strive for a state of lasting, true happiness.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the teacher, Taco. Not under the Samlaton. Ninjun to the case had a white given drink the Tibaletiza. Coetung Mambo Samlutan, Toma Meva Neshet and Depot, the Tomatoes Ganga Samlutan de Ora, the Maumbana and young Judah to the Samlutan, the Societolia, Ninjun Samlu Shuk Chambuchiwara, but the Teletandu Samlu Shuk Chambuchi, Socichibutana and Medusa, the Societ delicious Jinseg Pamala Soba, Yende Yasasa Butula Soba Karin, Soci. Shenjas were at Geshe Chesa. But the Zula Chisamlutan Konzo around the Chibu Corte or some. The Zula to make the driver tablet or some member so Chibu Agitar and the Mara Shvichidesha some. A Karina Tapshi Chichego to some che. The Marshiba say Arabs. They are not send the Pamasa Mamba Yen de la Sobada. There's a Mamba Kiwanga Matinga Machidi. The Padamada Yenda Nidu Sosolia send the Cheshu in Bay. Karichi Sungwin and Tinashim Majura Mendosam, and the Kijipin and Homa Shimbamato, Sosutili hit and get to the Kawanga Mangamanams, Karikari Kute, Sosutindi, Pamale Lazar of Chivaching getting really good day or this of the Samlocone. Cancer really in Ako. Rangi Kyoane cutie pay, tension but send the Pamanashi. In the Yeshi, Yamidua, Samsa. Really Samlutan Chilla, Samlutan with the Songdua. Oh, the could see Samlutan, the Salumatana, you get to the Tonas with the Cape Hendos and Hare. Zuzu Sachi may get a same jet together tower chaste. This was a Namjin Drondi is to me say, really Samlutan with Songdua. Chilla, Samlutaya. Ama Yandilla Sobacheva, Kerry Samlutas. Did you then some return to Zanchi Monachi, Jurio de Samlocora? Timadoko Chitan, Simjeta Jepada Majuse, Tanda Lichi Samlumadan, Kevas Duyo Marishada. Zuzu Sachi Mangir Chador, or the end. There's someone to the round a cutting chamber, said the Pama Yandi Roa, or Kande Curio and Tination by USC and Medo Samsa. But the end, there's someone to take a trip to Geshe with those. Nirinchi de Wara Tambu de Sose Pama Chijese, Tichi Jumedusa, Simje Tamja said the Teredoa. But the Tamja turns in the Kagaya to Yeshi, Omara Sanjum de Mabucha Sara Kagaya to Yomara. So soon when a Suri now could you remember to that trip to get. Google Karichuna out in the trip to Geshigusam. Simje Tamja to the Rhine, Tatanda round never maybe. Rani Kun say you ne Kunde Consulting Juracha awesome. Oh, Tindajin Gursun and Nation you turn to being some Simje Tamja turned to military Sidonga, Sanja Comato Wachagesa. Landurjin ne Tamje Shange, or Kursa you ne Kunde Sanja Kovach to Wacha. Tindaji to the Simje turn chat to do some teacher to. And Simje Tamja to Sanja Comato Wacha, some Luke Guara, Ibuchember. Oh, take an anis at Dangazo. Shojembe come delia, some Jetamjega to get a Sanja Comanchi Tobarcha. They said to Chunyangi, some. Oh, Kuno said them December, she was oh, do that.
Mm. So here at this point, thinking about samsara as beginningless, how one has taken rebirth due to ignorance and the various afflictions again and again, by reflecting in that way, one gives rise to an attitude of renunciation, this really strong and genuine wish to get out of this situation of samsara. So that kind of reflection, like if we really were to think about suffering, we would generate this kind of attitude of renunciation. But then the question becomes, well, what about all of those beings that we cherish, that we have affection for, that we have love for? For us to strive for our own peace and happiness alone is really not suitable. It's not right. When we think about the beings around us that have cared for us with great kindness and affection, like the mothers and fathers of this life, the beings that we really cherish most, we wouldn't want to leave them behind. And by contemplating going beyond just the parents of this life, we get into the contemplation of thinking about the sixfold cause and effect, recognizing that whoever it may be that we cherish or have most affection for in this life, every single being has acted in that kind of capacity in a prior life. Other than us not recognizing them, really, we have had that kind of relationship with every single being. And this is something that we need to contemplate in relation to every single being that we encounter. If we have just this kind of like general idea of, oh yeah, all sentient beings have acted as my mother, that doesn't actually benefit our mind so much as having that recognition with every single being that we encounter, really feeling that this being has acted as my kind mother or father or this or that. When we have this sort of thought of just all sentient beings as like this general category, and we're thinking, oh, I want to free all sentient beings, but we don't connect to that with the individuals that we interact with on a daily basis, then it becomes not very beneficial to our minds. But rather, we need to have the kind of attitude that encounters each being and sees that they have acted in that capacity in the past. And then we recognize that as much as we may want to benefit these other sentient beings, we don't actually have the ability to do so. so. And so the wish arises, may I attain this state of Buddhahood, this state in which all good qualities have been developed to their fullest and all faults have been eliminated in order to be able to benefit all sentient beings. So that kind of attitude of striving for Buddhahood, the state in which one knows all of the kinds of points of what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned, having the knowledge of how to benefit all sentient beings. Although, of course, countless Buddhas have come in the past and they have not been able to help all of the, extricate all of these sentient beings from samsara. We too should strive for that kind of state, thinking that I myself will become a Buddha in order to be able to benefit these sentient beings. And so for that purpose, we are listening to these teachings. So one should set this kind of motivation, thinking that I'm listening to these teachings in order to be able to become a fully enlightened Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Oh yeah. Oh, 당연히 내 참되려 봐. 이 말로 상디가. tumba sanje rani ki se ra. Chö nam tenjen debra jwa yimbe ne ki se. Ene rangshin ji trube tomba ngusum du se shin se. Ta sanje chumde de rani ji se yora. Ene chö nam tenjen debra jwa yimbe kyusen ji ne rangu ne tomba rangi ngowe tomba de ngusum du se shin se yora. Tedar shen la tenba yimbe so rangi ngusum du kenji se nyamdo toba kyule kebate. ane ngay dendre nyam solan de toban dendre kyeso ta kyonso dendre nyam solan sama songu yore se yora. Oh, shenle tenpa yinbe, tenpa sanje ne, tenpa mawa shenle kimba lana meba. Tenjin drebar juwa yinbe, ane rangu ne tongba, mitakba, tungye wala soba titruk yora namba ge. Tenjin drebar juwa peke shibu chik yora, shiting sadru te tiltik yora. O te indi ko, tenjin tedar shenle ya chu songba yinbe, sanje chumden de tumba mawa shenle kimba lana meba. tumba lana meba, o tindri resi ora. Tumba shenda suya mangchewa chigita jikden kamdi wandu chena. Jikden chebabu yode takpa ranjungi. Kansa chi yode tiki tseba resi arashi. Chigi armato chigi. Rangi chuji ngar zinda tang zinda. Tizuki tome maribe shi chene tindri yala chungi kone kursi tuzu chigi yo mardo. Ko tenjin devar juwa sungwa ti mikse chiri ti ora. Shi tawa tenla payo la tenjin devar juwa tonne tenla pap kiyo de. Rawa, ne lambe ya kone kondu chiya de kanga tenjin devar juwa de peke chibuchi sungwa de. Ti chane tenjin sungwa chane tenjin devar juwa yinbe rangu ne tongba ase. O, ti ne rangu ne tongba todi ne nyamo tamche tsawa la nyoba. Ti sanje chumden de timu mayiba sungwa songza. Tenjin sungwa chane tumba sanje chumden de la tumba lana mewa ase. Oh, di shenda mendra rese, di chane reso. Tumba mao shenle kimba lana meba, tendre ta tongba. Oh, di chane ne tendre le shiso ne, shida lamdan rebi namsha tamje sunge tira. Oh, tumba lana meba kiwa ta. Tedar tumbe, lungnam sanje tumbe sanje katuzo. Ene, rwa lungi tembe nyingbus. Oh, di lungi tembe nyingbu. Tendre yinbe chane tongba tumba. 이 롱기 템베 닝보 와 대다 또왜 싫어데 또왜 템베 닝보 시 테네 텐데 템베 템발라나 메바 테 템베 슝데 아니 로아 롱스 데르스고라 테 또왜 싫어라 소바테즈 테네 라나 메바레스 샹다 멘도 자불렌데 토 최송게 샹다 강게 마송베 테 소자 이찬에네 산젤이야 가서 메시게 Kebalana meba tabalan mabaresti shero tibadu chikyoria.
So then picking up in the text on page 98 in the English, it says then the Buddha directly saw the emptiness of inherent existence by means of the key point that phenomena are dependent arisings. So due to their being dependently originated, the Buddha saw directly then that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. So really it is through his knowledge of dependent origination that he then explains all of the rest of this like impermanence and selflessness and so forth, is really based upon that kind of foundation. And so because he then taught it to others in that way, the Buddha is the peerless teacher and the peerless knower among all others who are called teacher. So this really gets at what is the unique, uncommon teachings of the Buddha. In this world, most who are referred to as teachers assert some kind of a creator God, as if there were some being who independently created the universe and its inhabitants and so forth. But as opposed to that, the Buddha, through this recognition of dependent arising, taught what he saw for himself to others, and thereby is really unparalleled or peerless as a teacher. So having determined the kind of nature of dependent origination, he then bases his presentation of the basis, the path, and the result on that kind of knowledge, which he has gained through his own experience. So here, this kind of uncommon, unique teaching of the Buddha has the capacity then to harm the root of samsara, to actually be able to lead beings to a state of liberation. So here it says then, the verbal teachings that reveal dependent arising are the quintessence of the verbal teachings. So that which expresses dependent arisings is really the essence, the quintessence of the verbal teachings of the Buddha. And the wisdom that realizes it is the quintessence of the realized teachings. So here, in terms of the Buddha's teachings, he is peerless or unparalleled in the sense that he gave these teachings of dependent origination, both in terms of the verbal designations as well as possessing the wisdom that realizes that. And this is something that is unique to the Buddha, that was not taught by other teachers.
Oh yeah. Tanda di so de tanda de nge ko to a. Tende ke chimbure sungede. Tanda de le tende yala chungni ko na kwa ko ju de sungwe ba. Tende no de tende de bar chunga. Yala chungni ko na kwa ko yo des. O tende do ye de namja chogi tende do ba. Ame to ba la so tende ko na do res ti she ora. O ti she de gar she go res de. De kwa korea de da chi ne chu sange kanga de jikten cheba bo takba chi cheba mare se ti she go ra. De so so ge tome mari ko na la le sa ne. Ra ra so so ge ngan jing ge wa ge ne chagdan ge wa ge le sange sa ba te ge ko ge ore ti she go ra. Inde ti shenda so je she go mara. De je de bar ju ko ne ra ge ne le ju da. Ne 해지 지에 교인이 되걸 때네 치는 지게 치된 데서라 요구를 소바트들 자는 송도 안도 없어 요구 사브 가서 살린 잡바 텔레신이 텐데 도데 소라 티도 가서래 치된 데도 저랑게 녀레지다 해지 지기지 디소소나네 드부야가도 가가 투비어레스 나게 텐데 가라서 코아코에 티도 상마테 소소가지 코네라네 르가에 섬지 그 상해를 때네 여기 와래서 어디서 그거라 인데 티션다 메다 팀모 많이 버려 되거라 어쨌든 주다 깨라 때네 치네다 나게네다 녀랜다 해지시 교진 소소는 깨그래서 과거도 된데제 거기요 라초레서 티셔거라 소소데소레서 과거나 또게 교인한다 과련도 소소라 봐요레서 현대적인 시에는 그라신 세르 수수 다바서로 그게 매시 미지 송게데 가르서서 임바 다텐데 마레서 네버 소소리오레스 티코고요라 지대 제바보 가스도 셴다카요 라초르다스 티셰데 셴다 티도 주데 셴다 지금에 와도 콘도요라 티치라야 네데
So here, this is a really important point in that it was the Buddha alone who really, based upon his own knowledge and understanding, described the 12 links of dependent origination, how it is that we cycle in samsara due to ignorance, how we create karma and so forth. And then on the other hand, how it is that we extricate ourselves from samsara with the kind of purified side of the 12 links of dependent origination. origination. So when it comes to both the kind of external environment as well as the beings within it, all of the good and bad and so forth that we experience, it really arises in a dependently originated way. When it comes to our own cycling within samsara, this is due to our first grasping at an I and then giving rise to various afflictions, engaging in karma, and in turn, cycling in samsara. So the Buddha described both kind of an external dependent origination as it applies to the external world. How, like, for example, the Rice Seedling Sutra was taught on the basis of seeing a rice seedling, a sprout coming, and he explains how it is necessary to have the substantial cause as well as the coordinating conditions for that to come about. And so that is true of external dependent origination. And so too with internal dependent origination, we have to have the kind of substantial causes and the coordinating conditions to bring about this cycle of rebirth. So here, the kind of teaching of dependent origination, particularly that of internal dependent origination, really puts the sort of power in our own hands, as opposed to our suffering, our whatever experiences being the kind of result of the actions or the whims of a creator God, that we are sort of subject to whatever happens to us. That is not the case, but rather our own liberation or being within samsara is in our own hands. So again, as opposed to other teachers who might say that, well, whatever happens to us is the result of the causes created by someone else, the Buddha indicates that because of dependent origination, it's really in our hands whether we are cycling in samsara or able to get ourselves out of that.
Oh yeah. Oh, they do it. Then they draw a corners, then they catch him, but then the corners. And they got those a penguin papa lutugi. Umatawa shirabla soba to do cups of the Umatawa shunam, so Tawa shirabta, Ribotu Juba, Zabandobala soba cups of Sigara. Number Sanjay from the Chitan to be there. Top the shirama, which and a 2 year day. Then the Debarju so bad that came by the Shibuchis. They say the Shibuchis, each one they are to Sierra. Then this will be connected to your Sierra. Chitan to the Comaya, so to reconnect to your Carson attention Debarju so bad. Shandy Lodola so much, no do some baka to Yora. This is Tinju Ribadi in a tongue and Trawata that Chever Chesidwa. Tinju Debarju Ribati. About Noreta, Norway Shade Unity, some dig passe to Gores. Rangitawa Namsha Shida Lambda Drebu Namshatia, Tension Debarjo Shane, Imbechana Moving Neluti, Nezungone Kang, but the shade of Yora. Rangi Shida Lambda Drebu Namsha, some Tension Debarjo, a shish sone, Shaviora. Or Chesoza, Tendesana, Tended the Pecation Boreses, Gumbolutuki. So
it is then for that very reason. Then continuing, though there are many avenues of praising Buddha in general, the glorious protector Arya Nagarjuna, considering such critical points, so here really thinking about dependent origination, in his most important works on Madhyamaka, including the fundamental verses on the middle way, 60 stanzas on reasoning, dispelling debates, and praise of the inconceivable, praised the Buddha from the viewpoint of his teaching emptiness of inherent existence as the meaning of dependent arising. So here, although there are many ways in which we could choose to praise the Buddha for his various qualities of wisdom and method and so forth, it is praising the Buddha for his teaching on dependent origination that is really sort of most important or most valued, in that it is this view of dependent origination that has the ability to stop, to avert all wrong views, all bad views. So given that through this understanding, a proper understanding of dependent origination, that has the ability to dispel all of the kind of wrong views, the tangled nets of wrong views that those that people might have, and allows one to know the sort of actual nature of things, how they come about. It is for this reason that many masters such as Nagarjuna choose to praise the Buddha for his understanding of dependent origination or his teaching of dependent arising.
Goya. This was the Delia, Chedani Chembuke, the Batente Sombecone, Sanjel, Tevason Shasigora. Oh, the Chetsonga Peja, Tente Capsules. Tente Teva, the Tente Sombecone, Shagitava Toyara, or take up Scarisondosana. Kashi Station Somba, Keda Dambalana Mesh. The Batum de Shirwa, Shunam Tenjin Dewayamba Sine, and it moving Nelu Songiora. Kashi Station Somba Rangi Si, the Lamde Shandala Chinjimalo Temba Jabades ora. Kashi Rangi Station Shala Somba. Jura Kashi Station Somba, Kenda Dambalana. Kembalana Meba, Dambalana Meba, Standard Aldosa, Kenda Dambalana Meshenda the Madrasi. The Karesni Kawa Tenjin Debarajos. Kawa Sanji Chumden de Tenjin Debarajos Socias. Station Tombatella Dus, the Rangi Si, a Teleteni Shalayane, Domba Zangi Tombatella Dus, Jesongotoa, or T. Digi, Tendison Becone Hatugutoas, Tendison Becone Sanjela Tevanje, Tena Nicare Chunam Kujenda, Dashida Dosilla Tenjin Debarajoa, and Dinin Nangbe to Tamseki, Soshin Tabujuanos. Tenjin Debarajoa said the Kujuniora, Chi da Nagi Sama, Kudan Kela, Yelengi Kudan Legici Yengi Kula Tenji, Delne any Ike would esgore. This is the Shenda Karsura Chebabu Kuda Tender, Yonsakor Yomara, Raranga Tumu Maimbe, Dress Kiguina, Drag Tumu Maimbe Ku, Drag Sabin Core, the Chuda Luda Treasure Tindu Changachikora. This one called Kayong Mato Shandaji Samlatone, Geshe, Kegu Mess, the Lesenico, Yoyo Marasigora. Kudan Kay Sosona, Ramaba Kayogore, Yaku Susamna, Magis of Susamna, Pegimara, Kayogore Sigora. Kujiji Mazana, Kegu, some Susamna, Kokia, Marasigora. Oh, Korangi, Nezure Neta Resigora, or Tiduka Soda. Jetere. She did Deborah in the Kungo to get the tenor tagbet and the Sura. Then a kibet and the tenor tagbet and the standard Nishera so. Then Deborah Joa did she the Nagango Kangachilla Tene, Chijua Kudakel and the Shagdoa. He did Medabata, Chicken Jurashi, the Tungeda, let a human be curious in the Tungeda, Tame the Kangati to the. Then a Tama de Tito to her. Then a Tamasana. Kuji Tobala Tene Koya tribute, Coronally Mabuchi, Chashe Mabuchi, which you are there. Chami Yoma, Sama. It is Chada Kasar in the Pumbungala, then any Kasa Shawra, Mishagura. Me Pumbungala, Tetem Kasa Shawra. The Cotene Tower, Missia de Co. Novo Koran de Tene Tower. Kudan came Mabuchi Sobal Tene Kigo, all the Tene Tower. Pumbungala Tene. Kasas, Trashis, Tundus Patavio, Resera. Till 10 attack and disorder. And the ranking Oya Kidu to him Mabuja Sony Akewore. Roa. It gets us on that Chasha Mabucha Shiore. Chasha that tiny tin and the concert in the chick did is a Rangune Yomare. Rangunes in the Rawa, Rangune. Sosu Yomar Tatunda. Rangi Yosam Gudangas, quotation daughter, speciality Yongudo Mabuja. Rangi Mevas. Korang to ye homare. Nanganju something, Nangarang use some dish of watches, some Chesakiwara. In Eco Pumbungala ten, Soada, Semda, the shit, Zula ten, me Bashagora, Tahi Bashagora. Zuzu Sachike Yomara, Tina, Yona Pumbungan and she Yogoriana, Teleshene Yogora, Tinekaya Pendua. Just a tongue when you tell a payatita, then a tug attended the ten temptoa. Tommy Maduba, she Yomarese, Tommy Maduba, Nasa, Round, Zimbati, Temba Marese, moving as a Tungi Mares, Karanga Round, Yomarese, Pumbungala ten, a tagba, Pata, or Matutin, Round, she Unataka those, say to Ravio Marwa. Did it, just attend a tug attended the tennis you attending you with. Eke Shabotito Nekanga, she trooped to Yora. The troop de Karasi was a way nezu to the troop with Siora. Novo Korangi Legachadachilo, Kudan Yangi Chawachadachilo, 교단 깨를 때는 그 여단 요로 어디든 저 친질로 야부지 샤마도네 내가 그 노르비하라 어디 소자티 계신분에서 되셔도 언데도서 두 번째 때나 최남 교진다 교진수 교대 년에들 거거라 도롱기 교대를 거거라 계속도 로벌 현지 지견들 들 로봇 쟁게 그때 뭐부터 뭐 년에들 년에 들파 교르토에 로봇 쟁게들 현지 지견스라 나 교단 깨를 때는 저한테 땡지를 버려 와세 이치래 다시단 도저를 땡지를 버려 다시수도 그게 차시에 통대시어라 강바르지네 고개군을 소바치 통거라 남과 동벌이야 따야게 요마로 시고라 요마라 말아버지네 고럽지 통선에 되어라 어디 버수를 샤시스 미러버지네 고또시 통선 어디 강바르스 차시를 지 통거라 들 낚시시거라 발로요 어디지를 샤스 바 따야 시지거라 들 다시 가사에는 풍부가 소보치 그래 sempre 초아는 두시를 두지를 계속 간가 미다 싫어 미 속으면은 미래로 지금 말아 다 생겨지 미 생겨지 티나로도 슈팅이 시히어나 아니 그 소보를 주도 매게서 코코라랑 한투고 직접 소보 로가지 전 소보 내가 제가 그 내가 제가 전 루마라 임베서 당시단 도저를 때는 도저스 타녀들 거라 역시 지역에서 도저히 자단 도구에 타녀니어라 지들 명지 다셔 그래 시통에 될 시세에서 명다래 그 어들 tillam나 야부도 삼 도바시에 명지 다셔라 이 현다게 명들 랍스나 어들 때는 파 도바시기도 티티리 말에 들으세 타녀다도 지대게 타녀라 지대를 그 명들을 다 구주를 서셔라 뒤서서 도구에 삼을다 서셔라 마다 강가 류고네 좀 나를 디세고에서 수트에게 요 말아 이 연은 전부는 상만 민강가 찍어 연구로 타냐 강가 찍어 연구로 연구면도 용바를 메다메다를 따야도가 어디인데 도저히 또왜 파다 봐서라 역시를 때네 역시 잘 마인게 가시 잘 될 때인데 지지레스 발로 따거 대점을 샤고 그래서 지대에 타냐 때네 따봐 삼수도 또왜 따봐 삼세라 란지베 참마랑라 참마소지 침바스 다게 타쳐그래 따째쳐 따야게요 말했어 그래 지금 타냐랴 어디선다 따뜻 계신 분을 스테셔래 도시 대제 대바를 좋아하다 같이 다시단 도시를 대제 대바를 좋아 되는 남배 떡도 탐배가 소시 남바가 산제베 따와다 줍다 람트시도 가가가 소시 다부터 텐데테레세 텐데 따베 텐데다 텐데 깨베 텐데니부터 어디를 시소니 워디 근데 공고에 내서 레텐이 샤기 어디서 어디서 데리서
So here, additionally, in the opening verse of his praise of dependent arising, which really is a praise to the Buddha for his teachings of dependent arising, Je Tsongkhapa also praised the Buddha from the viewpoint of his teachings on dependent arising. So he says, he who speaks on the basis of seeing, this makes him a knower and teacher unexcelled. I bow to you, O conqueror, who saw dependent arising and taught it. So here, again, we have this praise to the Buddha who knows the actuality of things, knows the reality of things based upon this understanding of dependent arising. And having understood that for himself, he then teaches this to others. So in the paragraph that follows, it says, therefore, phenomenons arising in dependence on causes and conditions, or on the basis of imputation and imputed terms and concepts, is like a king post for all Buddhist tenets and philosophical views. So really, when it comes to dependent arising, we can have two basic understandings of that. The first is that for all inner and outer phenomena, their arising is due to dependence on causes and conditions. So here, when it comes to like something like say a rice sprout. In order to generate a result of a grain of rice, we have to have first the uncommon substantial cause, which is what cause is referring to here. And then the kind of coordinating conditions, the soil and heat and moisture and so forth, in order to bring that about. So when it comes to the arising of something like a rice seedling, if all of the causes and conditions are assembled, it doesn't matter whether we are sitting there thinking, oh, please sprout arise, or if someone else has that thought, or we think, oh, please sprout don't arise. It has nothing to do with that. If all of the causes and conditions are assembled, then it is going to come about. It's not from our wanting it or not wanting it, but rather it is due to those causes and conditions. And really based upon a reflection, a deep reflection of causality, of dependent origination, in the sense of all phenomena arising from causes and conditions, we can come to a kind of understanding of impermanence and suffering and selflessness and so forth. And then there is the kind of dependent arising that is dependent designation, we could say. So when it comes to any sort of phenomena, when we have a designated something, it is a whole that is designated on a collection of parts, right? So here, when we have something that we designate as being existent, there is a kind of basis, and then our mind, using terms and concepts, designates, oh, this is this, or this is that. So here, it's not as though like when we have this, we have a sense of ourselves as sort of existing in and of ourselves in our own right. But really, when we look at it, the person is something that is merely designated on the collection of the five aggregates. It's not as though we can point to anything within those five aggregates as being the person. But yet, when our form does some kind of activity, we say, oh, the person does that kind of activity. Or when we have a thought, we say the person thinks that thought, and so forth. And so it isn't the way that this, like, for example, the person appears to us as being existent in and of itself, in its own right, independent of our mentally labeling or designating it. This does not accord with reality, but rather it is only in dependence upon this kind of dependent designation that we then are able to posit the existence of something. And so, not understanding this sort of properly, there are many potential for mistakes. It's really all of our mistaken views come from not properly understanding dependent arising, dependent origination. So, for example, again, when we see something like, even if it's, say, like just the face of a cow, we can say, oh, there's a cow. It's not as though that particular single part is the cow, but rather the cow is something which is designated in dependence upon our mind imputes. So say we see just the form of a person, and then we can say, oh, there's the person, there's Tashi or Tundrup, whatever it might be. And without that particular basis of designation, we couldn't designate that thing. But these phenomena that appear to us as though they had some kind of existence in and of themselves, they don't actually exist in that way. So here, where we have, there's the imputed term, as in we give things names. If they somehow existed naturally as the bases of those names, then we wouldn't have all kinds of different cultures and languages that give things different names, but rather that name would sort of be inherent in the thing. And then there is the concept. So once we give a name to a particular phenomena, we then have like an idea that goes along with it. So there's nothing that is existent from its own side. They appear to us like that. If they were naturally existent as bases for those particular names, then we would all use the same kind of names. But yet, that's not the way in which they exist. And so here, one needs to learn to be satisfied with the kind of level of existence of merely being dependently designated. And this means that although one can't find the thing as it appears to exist. There is this mere designation and it exists by convention. And so, really, this understanding, this twofold understanding of dependent arising, both being dependent upon causes and conditions, as well as being dependent upon imputation, is like the king post or sort of the life stake that is for all Buddhist tenets and philosophical views.
Oya. Tadirida, Tendejindo, Yeta Mechawa dan Yingde Shera. Namju Tendejindo Shidua. Sholuga Chishiwara, Hotel Tendegi. Do Yeta Maseta, Namjunga Sudote, Hotel. Tendejindo, Do Yeta Mechawa dan Yingde Chewa, and the Tondan Yingbuti Shagin Shera. Take Ardo Sanan Doles, Do the Karasan Dire. Shunam Tamje, Kulechun, Teju Tishin Shigbe, Kulam Goba Kayamba. Kizunchimbu tege sunse sholokachi de la tendringbu dos yora. Tendringbu dos, otire. Tadi Karsursne Shebe tendringin do de la se. Tendringin do sholokachi butela, Sanjeji sungi chenor, tendringbu samuin do, tendringbu do sigura, tendringbu samuin do sigura. Ti Karsure, Nimbu tridi temben dose. Sanjay Sumbe Tendegi do Nimbu Su Tilne, Sholuga China Su Tune Sonshaban Dores ora, She Yonso Trashin se. Donde Chunam Tinjundu Tembes, Donde Chu Samche, and the Tenjin River Joares, Titegiora. Chunam Tamje Kule Chun Sigua, Tige. Can't temperature Tuja. Tensa Tuja de Suresana. Tuja tela kasure ka temper chave tuja teda la se chhe ka tinju yimba teda ne se kar tengyo se chhe kanga dakshila tenjen drelne ane pha thanya tak bo tesam le sha go re se ti she go re sera teda ne rangu ne yebe tongbe tendo ro yimbe se tende re se de Tambu Kidusa ko Judan came Mamboja Sony Akiri, ko Rangune, Judasan Dasanashi, Judas Yuni Korantina, Tayambur said the Yomarwa. Judas ko Judas and David Yover, Coordinate Tayango, say. Chichitu Drabu, the Doris Tapshidu Koran Mambuja said, and they are Bumbuchi Atayo Doa. Diana ko Tendin and Washington Judas Yomarwa. Judas Nyele de la Legici di Ora. Tesu Sama Son and Yuroche de Nuko Drevici, Tayango Arba. Oti Indico, Tagbada, Tembada, Shanda Chingan, Meva de Tinehako and Nambashana. Good and King attention, tell what you are taking, Jujin Konata or Mother. Jujin Martin Shanda, Chichi, and better to say your mother. Oti the I saw that. Was less on. Orangune Tongbe to draw in Besset. Tension never join. Draw. Tende in bed Tongbase. Tongba in bed 10 days ago. Could you chick till draw and get a shadow? A carching Senaco 10 days in. And then Tongba said in my dear, Tongba in a 10 day young Marisi to the Mount to the 10 days. Say Yorwa. Aina ko Umbaba to Luna Shichena. Now she chashe Kora Maike Kashe Letene Pata Guti. Koran Rangune Mevetara, Rangune Yana Chashe to the Tegmara, Yingone till Zugura. Dear is Yetin and a Kansar is the Pumbungan and dear is Yana Pumbungale Los Yor and dear is Zuso Sakora. Autumn Sen and yes, Yukora, Oti Omara. Karesana, Mingtaya Koran, the Pumbungabo, Karula Ten Palming Tagora, Kashe Tonga Ten Ming Tagora, Kashe also in the Sosa Salt and Tiringa Kibundo Kibumendusera. The Chen Mintagara. In the Tezukanga Chawacheva, the Tag Chawachevan Trokodwa. Ah, the Dilla lost you, na. You could not lose you the conscious charge of the Tag charge of Dromara. So villages and the Tag village of Dromare. And it's Chiriba Seva Letini. Asura. Ah, the Pumbul Pet and Shenchi Yona. Pumbul Lavachev, the Tag Chawachevan Dromara. The Kake mentioned Saturday. Such Chirubachana Carse. Sabutang Chebu Mimbeta Shara, Sabo Inshara, Le Cheba Budi Maishara, that is Sabos a long Cheba Budi Insura, long Cheba Budi Review Madam. Luigi, Kitchen Colorado said to Wachuna, Tag long Cheban Dumara, La Vego Jura Chefs, the Tag Guja Cheban Dumara, or Tea Ducasur, Yata de Mantas. Oh, yeah, the was lesson. Oh, lesson. Oh, yeah, timbre. Do the also trash. Do the chunam tinju do temba kala temperature tuja tela che ka tinju yemba te da ni rangune tongbe tendo draw yen la si tinju res do rangune tongba de kondo de sara. Ane ter den do de chuyi ying tongba ni tembe chane do de la chuji yingi do asigora sholo ga chidela chuji yingi do kare tende tenza tongba de tengora ya tipo do chilana she ja song so separa.
So then we turn to this next section, which is discussing the greatness of this dependent arising sutra and really the kind of essential meaning of that. So here, this is a sutra that is often quoted that really has this kind of, this verse really is the essence of the dependent arising sutra, wherein it says, the noble Mahayana Sutra called dependent arising states, the phenomena that arise from causes, the Tathagata proclaimed those causes as well as their cessation, thus taught the paragon of virtue. So here, really, all the essentials of the Buddha's teachings are contained within this one single verse. So here, this verse, the essence of the Dependent Arising Sutra, is renowned as the precious treasure of the Buddha's speech, the sutra that forms the essence of quintessential dependent arising and of the profound meaning of emptiness, and then teaches it. So this sutra reveals phenomena to be dependent arisings. Now here, for the disciples to whom it is taught, the fact that phenomena are dependent arisings takes on the meaning of being empty of existence from their own side. So here, when it comes to phenomena that are dependent upon causes and conditions, first, the Buddhists refute the idea as espoused by some tenet holders that the thing itself, the result, exists at the time of the cause. Now, if that were the case, then there would be many faults that would come from that. We wouldn't have to do any sort of work to produce a field full of a crop because that thing would be existent at the time of its causes. But rather, as Buddhists assert, it is only through these interdependent, the connections between those causes and conditions that anything comes about. So there's that level of causality. But not only that, so again, first it is establishing that there isn't a kind of a phenomena that exists at the time of the cause, but rather in effect is something that is dependent upon causes and conditions for its arising. But going further than the essentialists, the Madhyamakas also take this to mean that the whole is dependent upon the parts. There is nothing that exists in and of itself in, like, for example, the way that we say, oh, well, that's a human, but that's dependent upon the 5 aggregates. We can't point to some sort of person aside from that basis of designation. It's not existent in and of itself or from its own side, but rather it's only merely due to our designating, oh, that is a person on a particular basis, that we can say that it exists at all. So this is not something where it exists from its own side, and neither is there some sort of I that is separate and apart from the aggregate. So we are able to say like, oh, I feel sick, or I'm feeling happy. We are using a particular part, designating on that particular part the existence of the I. And if the body does something, we say, oh, I do that something. Now, if it were the case that the I were somehow totally separate and apart from the aggregates, had some kind of existence in and of itself, in its own right, without being merely dependently designated on the aggregates, then whatever sort of actions that form does, that wouldn't be done by the self, or whatever sort of thoughts were thought would not be done by the self. Now, there are those who teach that the self is somehow just sort of like the enjoyer of various things, that it doesn't have the kind of existence as something that is a dependent origination. But here again, as the Buddha has taught, based upon his own kind of understanding, all phenomena are empty of existence from their own side. So here, this sutra, in which it teaches phenomena to be dependent arisings, and that understood as being empty of existence from their own side, then based on this, the sutra reveals emptiness, the sphere of reality, dharma dhatu. And from this viewpoint, this sutra is also said to be called the sutra on the sphere of reality.
Oh yeah. Don't dele tene suda, don't sholoka shibudirida. Tentinimbion don't dele tene. Tito dal tubache, sambache, combache, baletene sigura. Tenjin deverjua tonto with esura. And dele said chunam chutamje tenjin deverjuamba. Dele simje ranshi, Jime number tabe, ranshi namdagi, ranshi namdagi, chuni, ngoni gudas. Dele tene. Sem nyamu bata shije tripa nyile takbe ane ngoni gute top to gure shera pangbate la se rangshi lobur namda ke ngoni gusi timi pangbate se ora ngoni guta sem lobur je trima nambar takbe ngoni guta o rangshi namda ke chunyi sude trime takbe chunyi dele se ora ane sem lobur je trime takbe ngoni guta sude Timi pangbate le sigora. Luburji trimasado, Nyamota, Mishiba Mombatazo, Luburji trimasigora. Rashi trimasa tamade semge. Sanke saso semge tegi chunye telia sigora. Trime tagwe semge chunye sigora, Tongbani sigora, tele sigora. Tele kasa trime nambar tagwe Rashi namda chunye ngoni kudan seto, sigora. Trime tagwe semge chunye tele sigora, tindrido. The Lubur Tridesi, Ngoni says, Tibani Pangbe, Pangba telesora, Pangbe and Telesor. Ngoni ku said, Lenisha to Ranshin Namda, which Charchiba Ngoni. Lubur Namda, Charchiba. Ranshin Namda said the same Tendrugi Tabe. Namje, Namba Tamjakin Beshi, Tendrugi Tabe. Tasasota, and the Tomba telesora, O Tinishera. Ngoni Wuni Reswa. Tatine, Vidadonge, Tonta Meso. Sheja tamje kembe ene Yeshi chugo tobar Yeshi chugo ta namje de sura meda tonge to tamela soba gobe nechu kandechu ne ti tarshim ba kemba tele Yeshi chugo se o ti se ene ya tibodo chilamna mangdo mata Yeshi chugo toba yinshin se bada.
So here, then, by seeing dependent arising, independence on this sutra, so by hearing, by studying, by reflecting on it, meditating on it, you attain two embodiments of a Buddha. Now here, I want to change the English slightly maybe. So the first is the nature embodiment, which has two types. So here is first, and this is really the nature embodiment is describing then the qualities of abandonment. Really the second component of it is. So first is then the naturally pure sphere of reality of the mind, which is free of characteristics of true establishment. So that natural purity, that natural sort of freedom from true establishment is then the first kind of the naturally pure sphere of reality. And then we have second, in terms of the nature embodiment, and here it's listed as the mind that has been purified of all the adventitious defilements defilements, but I think it should really be the sort of purity of adventitious defilements, because here we are referring to these qualities of abandonment. So this is really referring to the freedom from those adventitious defilements that is attained through eliminating all of those kinds of adventitious defilements. So in terms of the nature embodiment, I think it's maybe not the mind, but it's purity, that state of freedom. In terms of this is describing the qualities of abandonment. And then second is the sublime wisdom truth embodiment, which knows all there is to know: impermanence, suffering, emptiness, selflessness, and so forth. So here, when it comes to then the kind of qualities or sort of the embodiments of a Buddha, the nature embodiment refers to both that natural purity of being free from any kind of true establishment, as well as the abandonment, that purity that is attained through abandoning the adventitious defilements. And then there is the part of the sublime wisdom truth body, which refers to omniscience, knowing all that there is to know: impermanence, suffering, emptiness, selflessness, and so forth.
뭐야? 단디 어디다? 투베 추궁원도 제반 딜레스 투바상제 좀 된다게 내 최고 이시 추궁원이 올서 타르체니 추궁원도 제바레서 오랑원도 제바 딜레스 셴벤지 제베서 다 셴라 펜베시도 서라 제바 또 니지 공부 용수 투베서 좀 더드니 송베 탄데 텐데긴도 되서라 용수 투베 텐데긴도 데 tuja nambi trube tenji tsoro jogbar jaba imba tuja nambi kya donde tun sambala tene ane ishi chugo ngo niku sanje kobala soba tezu tobyege tendo samlu tonsaga shiti jogbar shilan jogbar jaba resora jaba imbe tende jen donde la chugu ringsi du trashi donde la chugu ringsi simi dagdwa o tipa tu chilamna.
So then the sage actualized this truth embodiment. So the Buddha himself then actualized both the Svabhavakaya and the wisdom Dharmakaya. And from this, his principal act for the benefit of others is this dependent arising sutra, which fully comprises his thought. So here, then, it is on this basis that others are able to attain such an embodiment. So he presented it as the main object for his disciples to practice. Thus, this dependent arising sutra is also renowned as the relic of the Buddha's truth embodiment, in that it is, he taught that proper practice of the meaning of this sutra in that way is the primary cause of ultimately obtaining quickly the truth embodiment of a Tathagata. So here, the Buddha, this sutra of dependent arising is referred to as like the relic of the Buddha's truth embodiment, in that it is the main basis for practice of others wishing to attain that.
Oh yeah. The darum donde chushindo nyamso lamba nese wara. Kene tardu tishinshik be chugo nyutu top. Ane kasura. Tobe gyu zo yinbar songde tenyele. Tenjin rebra jowa dene tishinshik ba namje chugi ku yinde. Su tenjin rebra jowa tonga de tishinshik ba tonga o shi songba taro se. Ta tenjin do de ten yabuchi tong songna. Tele tene ku songla soba tezo kanga tomde sanje koba togure songda ya tiba tu chindo shandure. Yeah.
So again, he taught that proper practice of the meaning of this sutra in that way is the primary cause of ultimately obtaining quickly the truth embodiment of a Tathagata. The Noble Dependent Arising Sutra states, this dependent arising is the truth embodiment of the Tathagatas. Whoever sees dependent arising sees the Tathagata. So here it is dependent upon understanding, realizing this, that one is able to attain the three bodies of the Buddha and so forth.
Oh yeah. And donde kaba sonsage lungba de sugora. Donde kanto songbe ne songjusa songbe lai ne redwa. Songjusa songbe lai ne harmonia se. Dalib se tochi kabura che chusa shiwanjira. O tele songbe de sera. Kanla songbe tuje suresne paba tadula soba. Nyende namda. ane pagba chambala sobe chenju sembe kortezul sombare chera kornamdas minji kitabo lai tene changba chambala soba tezo yores tezul sombare se ane minji kitabo changba da layongbo jashin la sobe lai kornamla songla se ya tibot chilapchana
So then, in terms of where this sutra was taught, this was said to have been given in the heaven of 33. So at the Pandukambala stone slab, a throne for the gods from the heaven of the 33 gods, Buddha gave this dependent arising sutra to an assembly of Shravakas, such as the noble Ashvajit, who was among the Buddha's first 5 disciples, bodhisattvas, such as the noble Maitreya, and a group of gods, including Brahma, the ruler of the beings of this tolerable world, Indra, the chief of the gods, and others. So here, this in terms of where the Buddha gave this teaching, this was from the heaven of 33 gods, and this was the audience to whom he taught this.
Oh yeah. Atene kande cheres do de sonro na se angelia shu yora. Teya papa chere si ge. Ane tomba la kuibe tu ne se kushepse cha chen sura. La ku tragwa chi du sarne chöden shengbe debu shindu chachewa tobar deba nambe deba kangbe chi du. Hato zu ya shu chöden shana ni penyo kande yore se de shu doa. Te chöden shangbe ane penyo de ya teme chi tenye chi du sombare sura. Chöden shengbe debu shindu chachewa tobar deba nambe deba kangbe chi du 상발라 소베 하다 게노 파마남다 게니 파마라 소베 소남 신도 페와르 교회 최단도 설세 고저 최대샤나 게나리 안에 배역한데 여발 하다 메다치 수수 상배나 이 서로 나아시아 슈도와 제레시게 와 셰소와 셰소와라 네 산제 좀 되는 거데 do de sombare se sholga tembe ye dame chen de somba do tinile son do nalte de do sera ya tichila.
So, in the context of teaching the sutra, furthermore, at the outset, the noble Avalokiteshvara bowed respectfully to the teacher, put his upper robe over his left shoulder, a sign of respect, and requested, in order to fulfill the wishes of those gods here who want to attain a very great effect from building a stupa, please teach them the Dharma and explain how to greatly increase merit. And in this world of gods, Mara, Brahma, Medicants, and Brahmins, explain how monks and nuns and male and female lay followers can maximize their merit. So here, this was the kind of a request that was made by Avalokiteshvara. How can these beings gain merit or increase their merit? And this then, according to the Noble Dependent Arising Sutra, the teacher thereupon spoke the central stanza of the sutra. So it was in response to this question by Avalokiteshvara.
Oh yeah. That do de do tam ye tam do de sonshu de che de chöden shingla ani pen de yor de she do. Te dar ye tam do de sonshu de che de chöden shingla sonam shindu ja chewa toba ne pe shan she do te chöden chunju ji shamba ina se go chenbu shana pen chenbu ura. Pena kyuru re tene drusam bi chöden she che de. Kyuru re se chijung gi che chi chunju shana. Tela soshi kapsam da kite ya yebe soshi de kapna she chunju she ro. Ne ta chungshu ina songgara. Ne do su de te chöden la do den de kenje do kan la do pyura. O do bagule meto tsam she chena ya se o den be chunju she be cheba ina ya. Tedar cheba bo hada menamla 상배 선남 깨내서 라 상발에 계지 선남 깨내 되네 시표네 최대의 샤네 시표네 상배지대도 계시에서 되네 내 상배지대네 내 상배 라토소리아 교도래서 된대래 samsa 그래서라 하남다 깨와냠바라 깨와는 교래한도 되니래 소소세 어디 보다 지켜나.
So here again explaining the benefit of making a stupa with this sutra. It continues saying, thus, if you construct a stupa and make this dependent arising sutra one of the sacred objects that you place therein, you create very great merit. So here, even if it is something really tiny, so for example, even if some humans and gods were to make a stupa that was merely the size of a myrobalan fruit, or like I think gooseberry, something quite small, and place within it a king post merely the size of a pin. So you can imagine that if the sort of life stick in there, the king post is just the size of a pin, and make an umbrella for it with a mere vakula flower. So again, something quite tiny. Even if one is to make such a tiny stupa, they would generate the merit of Brahma and then be reborn in the Brahma worlds at the time of their deaths. So from passing from there, they would then be born among the gods of the pure abodes. So here, the kind of merit that one is to accumulate by making a stupa that has this sutra of dependent arising within it is something that is very great, even if that stupa itself may be very small.
뭐야? 문두수 내가 자갈이야. 예담마세도 송슈샤네 최대 신에 로스도세. 대패선데 사르나들이 담이스투버서 최대 첨부쇼라. 맞아 고래 겹대 첨부쇼라. 어디 고르셔라. 문두수 예담마세베 책제 책수제바데 낭된도 쇼베 최대 나로 쇼촌. 쇼베 최대 작업법에 유도 신서유배 뺏은 찍내세 나다 사르나도 천국고에네 산제 천국고에네 사르나들 유배 담미스도 바스라 최대 첨부 줘라 나무 첨부 치면 돼 고고쳐서 치죠 꼬리 겹서 치워라 나라도 최대 손에 시대요 말아 파파제 고고랑 첨부 치워라 어디 담미스도 바스라 되라 담미스도 바세바 내고라 나버츠 준비 수요지 최대 대예시 된들려 제바표 동주표 된데시라 최대 치료 공도 치료 제도 치료 고마츠베 로선병원도 최대 양해매가 상발해서 거라 치료 공 로선병원도세 치료 마츠베 로공게 로선병원이야 최대 양해매 자갈 빼네 디디자 고 남벌 유네네 가스가 최대 마무샹도와 공바 마무샹라 어째서 근데 선경원도 최대 양의 매기 뒤수 생여세 생여받아 인지 자갈이도 인지 등어주도 가리나 섬 최대 첨부터데 시비샹샤섬 요원을 가리나 섬어도 인지 자갈라 원줄 제백급 최대 대난도 대강 예, 뭐셔리 지갑세 때날 때 가려나 산재게 르시르치 요나 구르다 텐데 요나 남서다 텐데나 가려나 삼변제라 뭐주도 왔기네마 이드네마 뭐지 걸가 뭐이베 갑 최대데 나네 산재게 구르르시 마니자 산재 구르르시스그라 텐데 깨게라면도서라 세모네 센티미터 네가서 구축구치스 센티미터씩 쓰여있어라 건져 마치네 가제 받은건 인터넷에서라 삼내에서 돌리게 된도 떠든데 깔이야 돌리게 깔이야 아니 어머 예담마 히두바바세 티요래 돌리게 된도 예담마 히두바바와 히두테션도 따당가도 해와르다테 요 대션자 요 니로데 에마도 마샤마네서 먼저 최남 탐제 교례 소세데 산스케나를 제제요라 예다르마 최스요라 최탐제라 히두바바스 최남 탐제 교례 소소라 히두스 교례스요라 최탐제 교례 소아레스요라 ane hitu teshem chenata gyule tikyu seora hitu teshem tatanga dosu sanje seora yawarta de sanje sumbare seora yetama hitu baba hitu seya tatanga do yawarta de ane kasare teshem cha yo nirod se chula gokba se de da te shamcha yo nero de system gokba se ra ene ne ka sere damcha ne te tin de ba se shan de chuna ta jul ti de sho chula gokba khaim ba se de ra shamcha yo nero de evam vati ma shamana evam vati se sungba ba se ma shamana se kejon chembe song se maha chembo imba shamana se kejon se da o te songba re se ora o tin do de do ka le ti che ne ti chi ti ore mo de shenda ke mere ta chode se che za te ngema de ta chembo che de sanje songbe ning bu ro che chode shan lo so ye do o ti chi lam na ya.
So those kind of benefits are stated in the Noble Dependent Arising Sutra. And dating back to former times in India, the land of the noble beings, there is an example of this custom of building a stupa and placing within it this Dependent Arising Sutra. So when we think about stupas, usually it's not really these tiny ones, but the ones that we can say walk around, circumambulate, and so forth. And in an example is the great stupa known as the Dhammek Stupa in Sarnath, the town on the outskirts of Varanasi where I used to live. So here, this Dhammek Stupa is like a large kind of black round stupa. And even nowadays, it remains a holy destination and object of offerings for Buddhist pilgrims. So this stupa was built around 300 BCE during the reign of the Dharma king Ashoka. So at the time, 300 years before the Common Era, during that period, the Buddha's teachings had spread all over India. And so there was at that time the Dharma king Ashoka. And when the British then ruled India, out of their curiosity, they decided to open up the stupa and see what was inside. So they decided they needed to figure out what was inside this stupa, thinking there might be some sort of like relics of the Buddha or his clothing or something like that. And although they did not find therein any physical relics of the Buddha, it is said that inside, on a stone slab 91 centimeters below the top of the stupa, they found a 6th or 7th century inscription of this Dependent Arising Sutra that reads, and then there'll be this verse. But so here they opened it up, and within this stupa, then like about 91 centimeters down, not finding any sort of physical relics of the Buddha, they found instead this stone slab with this verse that we have had, and I will try it in the Sanskrit. Ye dharma hetu prabhava hetun teshan tatago yavadat. And so teshan cha yo niroda evam vadi mahashramanaha.
Oh
So
yeah.
here, this then is the
Oh.
verse which we have read that says that the phenomena that arise from causes. So ye dharma is those phenomena. Hetu prabhava is the arise from causes, and then hetun teshan, those causes. Tatagato hyavadat refers to the Tathagata proclaimed or said, and then teshan chayo niroda is as well as their cessation. So the cessation of those causes was taught then by the paragon of virtue, the highest virtuous one, the Buddha. So this is what they then found inside of that stupa.
Oh yeah. Oh, that ship do the tendergin do the Europe Trubodan Timbesu Kata Truboda Timbena Yisuchi Sara Tansana Shisu member. Imaning Bay Yisunal Trishavch. Yetamasa Shologachi Trishav Turkan Temperes ora. Yisula Tribashi, Nye Bashes, Chuded and Alone Tirasha Segura. Yetamashi do the Pegetu Jurmedrawa. You tremble Medra Angasam, Testes Medama the Shita Medashi Omara. Juru Medra Angasam to Shera. And then, oh, take a wash shadow, Sana. Young pen, Nalente, Sola Kanda, Shede, Holu, Moshika, Young Nalenta, Sola Kanda, Shede, Lama Yabato, Young or Yasarato Tosa. Oh, but the young pen, Nalente, Sola Kanda, Shede, Holu, so, Moshe, Jacobs, Yetarma, Chiche, Equebe, Salibia, Samantan Recala, Yetama Chiche de Mabu, those Segura, Samacha Tigal, and it. 이게 그 샤브인데 최대한 된다는 태샤서라 나래전에 시고라 잘래 찾아만 보세라 찾아서라 별에는 찾아서도 사도도 된들라 이게도 최대한 그 샤브인데 요라 된다네시 찾아서셔라 다들 다들 돌림 자멘데 가라 그 샤브 태샤선 그래 라울로 뭐셔 그 예담에 실제데 잘립 찾아만 보쳐요 바다 잘립다야 또도 찾아든데 뭐부터 단지 그래 대단자와 잠바다 잠바다 지주 잠야 저쪽에 양 빠르게 게게 찾아든데 잡샤시고라 근데도 뭐부터 스테게 마 길에 유사라 제가 용게도 소리야 대대럽지 제에 로서에서라 찾아만 보토 요새 찾아된다 이거래나 찾아된다 윈도스 졸라카 재미 대대남라 된도요 대대도 나서 연도세 어디 로선도세 제가 졸려 얘기 제 날에도 로가 로년가 거야 근데 좀 된데 날에도 사바데 겠네 이게 이렇게 와라 공부하다 이렇게 랍트치 와라 어디 로년가 거야 거리야 뭐다 뭐마까지 내만에 매니 버스고라 하네 사바데 랍트다 저쪽에 콜로니 수장가 치베 거리야 돌린 손도 쳐도와 이 이제날 건조 티샤스 다 공대 되날 텐데 티샤스 남이 스토바다 저쪽가 되날도가 tutenshi kebe chuli sondu sungshe ka tipsusu ko tepchi soyara o tinal ndeko shasi ti injiti ngobore piga ngobore di tambara seta saga deba da tade nalendra deba nalendra kande shore ta tensa nalendra kande chura ti kol konzo keba su som tendre mabuti usara o dinal ti shasi gore ya tichi lapshana.
So here, this inscription was in a 6th or 7th century style of script. So this would have been a very old kind of script, different from maybe what we would recognize today. And there are also 5 renditions of this sutra in the Tibetan canon. So there were slight differences from the various translations, nothing huge, but into the Tibetan canon, there are 5 different versions of this sutra. And so, continuing with this, the importance of this dependent arising sutra, also when the site of the glorious Nalanda monastery's temple and stupa ruins was excavated, the British discovered many small clay tablets inscribed with this dependent arising sutra, as well as many similar figurines of Maitreya and Manjushri. So here, again, when the British arrived in India, they did excavation and exploration of various things, including the old temple and stupa at Nalanda. And they found many small clay tablets with the dependent arising sutra inscribed upon them, as well as many small figurines. There's, we use this term tsatsa to sort of indicate something that is made into a stupa or a figurine, sometimes with script and so forth. But these appear to have been like instead of, say, pictures or something that visitors might be offered to a temple today, that these were offerings for the visitors to a temple. So the source for this is a conference that was held to commemorate the 25th anniversary of a new school being built at Nalanda. So in that collection of lectures that is called Nalanda Past and Present. So here, this was a gathering of scholars who were studying the past of Nalanda, as well as invested in the kind of present of a current school. They said that in former times, there was a custom of giving such figurines to the faithful visitors to the temple. So here, it would appear that in the past, the tradition was to give for those who visited either this inscription of the dependent arising sutra or maybe a small figurine of Maitreya or Manjushri.
Oh yeah. That's Chunam Tamse Julia Chunse Shologashidoa. Titamba Sanje Sumbare Maris Togati Ratase. Taba Sanje Sumbena Nedinana de Chuna tamje chebe suje de tobe shene sombe ka revese. Tamba sanje shene sombe ka. Chidan katelia shene sombe ka chesu na ka chinji lebe ka skashe yora. O tina shene sombe revese. Tina ne tishinshikbe somse to tadanga to hiya warta tese. Sanje tishinshikbe se rangi chewa chugi revese ora. Ne kejun chembe se. Mara Mahasharmana says to Mahasharmana. Kishon Chambo says Sanje Kishon Chambo Tege so Tishishi Wesson say Ragaran Church Younger Vesigora or Te Tobaquera. Sichen de Tishishi so Shida Kishon Chambo Tege so she son betumba Rani Ranila and the turban give a Sichen de Tumbe Shena son Beka Yeba Mirik so Nyamna Seti Tumbe Sumba Yusamare Samna. Oh, tete be somba reslenja ora. Ya tiji lakshan dama.
So here I forgot to say, I have included these descriptions here to clarify that the custom of making this dependent arising sutra as a sacred object for the inclusion when building a stupa, just as instructed in the sutra, is something that dates back to ancient times. So then we have in this verse, a qualm arises from someone where it says that if this verse that begins with the line, the phenomena, so that the phenomena that arise from causes, is the spoken word of the teacher, then because it also contains the phrases the Tathagata proclaimed and the paragon of virtue, the teacher would be praising himself, and therefore this verse is not suitable to be this teacher's spoken words. So there are many different types of speech given by the Buddha, but here when it's saying that, well, the Buddha is referring to himself as the Tathagata and as the paragon of virtue. So would he not then be praising himself? So is it really right to say that the Buddha taught this, or the Buddha is the speaker of this sutra?
Oh yeah. That tamba san oh te sanje sumba regres or karesana. Tamba sanje ne minjiba shi yodenga wa ibe rani la taba ngobar chunga doleja. Sonde tinye le se kontra yora ngobar ngobar chunga dona le te yongdwa. Tanda di Kasha Sanje le taba te yongora o te Sanje minjikba ka gang yonde dende yos songbala ko jikba yo marwa. Parche tamche bala minjikba minju tamche bala minjikba sera. Tezo ka nge shingi yo lam dere tapshin dere parche dere te kanga songe wone yongora. Minjikba shinga wa yibe. Rani la taba ngobar chunga do se shor. Tena sangma Sanje loju sangma yora. Tezo tangbo te kasora kimne kimbo rabdu chunga de kanga chazan yora oti nal do shera te karese nga dan rawa ye me bese nga la lobyo gaya mese sanje koranya ba mese nga la lamge ke ge mese tangbo hindu ge sadhu keta shimbuto zal pebyora pebne tezo kanga ge tingizi komne samden da sungmi da tendre bodo droya tingizi tozo konzo hako yora Timado koa tsa tezo kanga koa re de ora. Koa tsawa ne choje ke tabshi te konzo ten tubu yo marwa. Tene teke tu machim ne ludu kawa she ne rangi rang gongpa shebe zeba zayarwa. Sa ko te sanje korang ba sung shabe taba tamze kemba tabze lamde suje ke lobe shendak sheba mayin sungu yo de. Kasha tenso te tende senge ora sanje hindu re Kegen kanga Hindu lama shachiri titi sombares re tosto tingizi komya ta tendre wato tharwa tamje chimba tabje lama no ate tu machin bara te sonzane loso ti komchepche chembara randoki ngadan drawa ye me be dene kasa ngala lobyo gamete jiten sanje ngachi bose yangda changju tamba topse Jidena Sanje se tanda depe de ngachi bu yin sora. Yangda changju ta lana mebe changju topsare yin sora. Tamje sinu jiden kunje la dene chugun kene nga magu chugun tume kyo kanga nga magu kyo tamje pangba yin sokyo ra. O tishi kyo na ya. Future. What is future?
Oh. So here, although we might have the sort of question like, why would the Buddha praise himself? Or is that something that was spoken by the Buddha? Well, the response to this is that the teacher Buddha has the qualities of the four fearlessnesses, and we'll get into what those are. But based upon his having attained liberation in the state of omniscience, he has this kind of fearlessness with being able to proclaim with respect to his own realizations and having removed all obstacles and so forth. And so he also praised himself in the Perfect Renunciation Sutra. This is the sutra that describes the kind of history of how the Buddha was a householder and how he renounced all of that and how he pursued this path to liberation, kind of gives that history. And in that sutra, he explains, or there's a quote that says, "There is no one like me. I have no master. In the world, I am the one Buddha. I have attained genuine enlightenment." And he continues by saying, "I outshine all. I know the entire world. I am not sullied by anything." And so here, there's a little bit more that comes of that, but we're at a page break. So when it comes to the Buddha proclaiming in this way or sort of praising himself, it is based upon really his own knowledge that he has gained. So there are those who look at the Buddha and they say, oh, well, he studied under all Hindu teachers. And so why wouldn't he sort of be considered Hindu? Didn't he learn that stuff from him? Well, the Buddha initially may have studied under the teachers that were Hindu, who may have been able to attain really high levels of meditative concentration, for example, but none of those teachers had the path to get out of samsara entirely. It was due to their sort of lacking that knowledge that the Buddha then pursued that on his own. The Buddha was the one who discovered the path to liberation and omniscience. And so for those who would say that, well, the Buddha was Hindu, he studied with Hindu teachers and they taught him all of these things. While they might have taught him some about attaining these kinds of meditative concentrations, the way to get out of samsara was something that the Buddha discovered for himself. So he really, based upon that kind of certain knowledge, he's able to say, I outshine all. I know the entire world. I am not sullied by anything.
Oh yeah. Then those are some. Tamja Pansha Sete Namdrede, Rangi Membership Sulate, Rangi Chane, Shanda Sulate Gomeso Gura. She Tedara Tamjawala, Mijibe, and then our Yebe, Rani Chivacha, Mijik Bashingarwa. One Mato and To and Segra, Kabore, some sort of Lamnasa. One day you came by so away and then our Sonjako. Somebody soda. Oh, Chavacho Banjato, Rangiran, Chavacho, Kayo Maresera. Chena Tamje Cheso, Tichen de Kapsu, Mijikba, she could not shoot them. Sanjela Mijikba, she said, Yendenga Yora. Shologachi de Kapsu, Mijikba, she tembecone, and a Songore soda. Mijikba, she pajama shagre to them. Chichen de Kapsu, Mijikba, she could not tombe. Chötenba zeba yende chönam tamje gyule chung sedwa shebe tende yangla chungye je chönam tome marikba la tende niban duchi jungane ne kewale kashi juwe ba tende yangla chungye ngama gyule tende chima nam junga hilas sanje chunde tende yangla chungye sura chönam tamje gyule chung sedwa de 동해 덴바셰기와라 동해 진직된 고아당에서 동해 여바 참모 탐제된 거에 내다 류다 롱전 디사마 소거라 천안 탐제에서 아주 통대 내류 롱줄을 써본 디사마 소거라 귤레테네 좋아래서 레다 영문배 귤레테네 좋아래서 동해 덴바디 셰거라 천안 탐제 귤레 중세 디주 대신식배 송세데 디주 레다 영문이들에서 군주 덴바디 셰거라 디지테이션. 줄은 고바세 고된 남대셰고라. 로 제수 고아다 대규 동해다 동해 규대 고바세 고베 고바 요래서 고대셰고라. 띵 고버 제베 람야 요레세 티 치마니 티 고텐다 람데니 시그라 강 고벤 고바 요레스 계속 고주 동해 템바다 티 큐다 셰반 고벤 고바 요레세 고텐 요레스 거라 띵 고버 제베 람제 템바 요레세 셔나트 줄레 뒤시 줄랑 고바 강이 바세 띵 고람 미티 시그도 다티 고래 텐데 양라 존이 다 나마가말 때 침바침바 쇼레 송거라 침바주에 야나 깨베 텐데다 어떤다 때레 깨베 텐데셔라 유아 일하세 야나 깨베 텐데다 소아 두시 제 맹게 텐데 수기 폼알 텐데라 깨베 텐데셔 주지바 깨버시오라 소아 두시 남제 맹게 텐데셔 맹수기 텐데셔 쇼라 시바 맹수셔라 수기 폼보는 수기 텐데데 수기 텐데다세 맹게 되데 렉발라 속베 렉베 텐데셔 시바 모성가바 주바 렉바세 시오라 맹게 되데 렉베 ken게 소라라 속바 초베 텐데 뭐 소라디 시오라 가시소 동해 템베 되베 최남 탐제서라 최남 탐제 교례 중에서 통해 말을 받아 따던다 오늘서 두바 십시 차와잖아 근데 하나 중에는 데뷔 텐데 주다 교회 텐데 주요라 대창마테 시바 메소네 껴알랑 못하면 시바 메소가 받겠지 두바를 받셔라 안에 템버 좋아하지 전에 가서라 교회 텐데 주요라 통해 말을 봐 이번 도치 선반남시세 네 시바 메소 껴라서라 네 이게 가 개바세바 고발렘바 주바 시바세 이 교회 텐데 주라 이때 데뷔 텐데 주데 시바 메소가 받겠지 주바를 봐 템바서와 주지바 껴와 중이바 가시치르 텐데 저서 강가 통해 템바디 그 딜레테네 주부 딜레테네 쇼아레스티 셰거라 전화 탐제 교례 쇼스 tindechen kwande digora tende yana chi re she te do mege de regbe je choala soba choye tende ta kashi tende la soba tunge tembe de chönam tamje debi tende tutisgora ti tamje de tome mari ba niba duji sumba namshi che yeba seba che kubal namba che chuba siba le tende chore gyui tende tule tende chore chona to gyule chore ti shedo ne kashi tonge tembe tebe chonam tamje tome mari tende ta niba duji tende ta suba namshi tende keba seba dendo kuba lemba che chuba siba tende le chwa yimbe se ne tukdeni le da nyomo be tonge tembe shedo chonam tamje gyule chore se de 도데네 그래서 도데네 레다 녀몬베 군중 때문에 교례 중앙에 맞대봐야라서 티버도 실람나 돈다 최남 탐제 교례 중세 돈다셔서 최남 탐제에서 데뷔 텐들샤네 되래 내 류론주 삼마스네 되요라 고연내 류론주스네 이때 교회 텐들 두스 교회 텐들 도매 마루와 이번 도시 수반남시셔라 아니 내 개버세바 kubalem bachuba sibatera juitendera shenda de debutendera shiba meso ngaba keji tubaro tembasoase tisilabna tipatu silamna.
So finishing this quotation from the Perfect Renunciation Sutra, having eliminated all faults, become liberated and free from attachment, I have super knowledge. Who else would you depend upon? So here the Buddha is expressing his quality of fearlessness of assertion. He also expressed his own greatness. And here we'll get into each of the 4 fearlessnesses. But first, also the teacher gave the teaching by means of the 4 fearlessnesses in the instance of this verse that begins with the phenomena. And so again, we have the phenomena that arise from causes. And so by saying the phenomena that arise from causes, the Buddha indicated that each of the phenomena that are the 12 factors of dependent arising comes into existence in dependence on the former factor acting as its cause, from conditioning factors, as in karma arising in dependence on ignorance, and up to aging and death arising in dependence upon birth. So here, when the Buddha says in this verse, then that the phenomena that arise from causes, this is really referring to the true sufferings, the kind of situation of our abode, our body, our enjoyments, all of these things that arise from causes, as in the causes of karma and the afflictions are going to be in the truth of suffering. And then the next line where it says, then the Tathagata proclaimed those causes, this is then referring to the true origins of suffering. And this is really encapsulated in the Buddha's teaching of the 12 links of dependent origination. And then finally, where it gets to, as well as their cessation, that is encapsulates the two truths of the true cessation and true paths, the means by which one achieves those true cessations. So here, returning to the commentary then, by saying, so here, alternatively, he's indicating that each of the former factors acts as a cause that then leads to the arising of the latter. And alternatively, he was indicating that all phenomena can be summarized as true sufferings. So here, those are the kind of effect links of the 12 links of dependent arising. So those being birth, that's a little bit out of order, but then name and form, contact, feeling, aging, and death, those 6, as well as then the causes that are dependent arisings leading to such effects. So those being then initial ignorance, conditioning factors, consciousness, craving, grasping, and becoming. And so here, when it comes to the kind of teaching of the 12 links of dependent origination, these all encapsulate the kind of 4 truths. And here, the Buddha has taught them in such a way as one understands that these true sufferings, as in are the resultant factors of name and form, the 4th name and form, contact, feeling, and then birth and aging and death. So those being the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then 11th and 12th links. And then we have the kind of true causes that lead to them, as in indicating the true origins of karma and the afflictions through teaching of initial ignorance, the conditioning factors, consciousness, then craving, grasping, and becoming. So the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 8th, 9th, and 10th links. And so it is in this way, through that teaching, that he clearly indicates the 4 noble truths and how one then achieves liberation.
Oh yeah, that just awesome. Oh, then it is love now. Chema, that I just saw do. This also the Salujambe Dochiba. Salujambe do, Talinju about the. Oh, the Salujambe do the ropes, Rede Yungmara Quayo Maratunda Shasara. Salujambe do the ropes, Marsarsi. Logi, did Chishana. Chema did Sanity shed the tune. Chundaching Sanima Sandawaching Gona Nigona. Tima robs of Logi is Shana. The dinner Liora and Jebatina Liora and Dodin got the Tishora. Or Tim Bian Tangin and Dodi Salujam and Dodi Sutra Shana Tit and that is Rose Rosama Love Shana did shake do assertion. Those are way to do some whatever. Salujam and Dodin Jebadita, the shet on that to suit in the Shesara. And Dodin the robs of the city, Jenny, Mamushim Gogra. Or Tarek Sandawachik, Chemachi, Tichemani, a chick, but don't go mare. Oh, yeah, what understood, yeah.
No. So we have run out of time for today, so we will stop there. There is very little left now in my commentary. And so I just want to say that in the following week, whether it takes us one more Monday or 2, I want to take the time to actually just read through the whole basis of discussion of this entire commentary, which is the Rice Seedling Sutra itself. Now, we've already really gotten the meaning through going through this commentary, but I would just like like to read that and make a few little comments in order to, it won't take very long, but in order to really sort of cement the meaning of this. So in our future session or sessions, we will then go through one reading of the Rice Seedling Sutra itself.
Oh yeah, it is.
Thank you so much, Genla. Thank you, Katrina, for your beautiful translation this morning. And I guess we'll see everyone here again next Monday at 8 a.m. Pacific. We'll finish off with some dedications.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losang's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, Tuchenangin.
oh yeah. Also.
Recording stopped.